call the meeting to order. This is a regularly scheduled Greer City Council meeting called and convened this evening, May 25th, 2021. Let me welcome you and thank you for joining us tonight. We have a long agenda as reflected, I think, partially by the number of people that we have here with us this evening. We are indeed in budget debate. And we've got a number of other items before us this evening, so we will be at it for a while this evening. We appreciate your indulgence. We stepped outside for a minute and took care of just about all the business that was on the agenda, so it'll be shorter than we thought. No, we have been trying for quite some time to get all seven of us in the same place at the same time for a picture, and so that was why we had a bit of a delay this evening, but nevertheless, we'll proceed with the meeting. We open our meeting with an invocation and a pledge of allegiance. Council member Jay Arrowwood is going to lead us this evening in the pledge of allegiance and then an invocation for council. If you would, please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray.
Dear God, my Lord, my Creator, I thank you for this day that you've given us all. I thank you that you have given me this time on this council to help lead your city. I pray, Lord, that for this council that we do your will, that everything that we do, we seek your wisdom and your guidance, and may our decisions be pleasing to you. And as we go about our leadership roles, I pray that we won't be meek and that we will stand for what we represent and represent you. Forgive me of my sins. In Jesus' holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen. We set aside time at the beginning of each meeting for public forum. This is a time that we allow those folks that have an interest in something on the agenda to speak to council. Ms. Duncan, do we have anybody to appear in public forum this evening?
No, sir.
With that, then, we will move to the minutes of the council meeting. Council, before you should have those minutes contained in your packet. We have two this evening. We'll dispense of those in separate motions. I'll entertain a motion that we receive minutes from May 11th, 2021.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, you have before you as well the May 18th, 2021 budget workshop minutes. I'll entertain a motion they be received.
So move. Second.
Motion and a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council departmental reports are contained in your packet this evening. You can get more information from the department head and or the administrator. In that regard, Ms. Susan Howell joins us this evening for our financial activity report.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm giving an update for the general fund as of April the 30th, 2021. Starting out with revenue, we collected $4.7 million in April for a year-to-date total of $28,635,000. Operational expenditures in April were $3.9 million with a fund balance usage of $2,300. That gives us a year-to-date total expenditures of $24,709,000. If you refer to, which is actually right on budget. If you refer to your dashboards where we compare actuals to benchmark, we have an overall positive variance of $3,586,000. And then the cash balance in the general fund as of April 30th was $17,646,544.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions from council? Comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, we've got two presentations tonight, and just a quick scan of the audience. I don't know if he has joined us yet. John Loomis. Oh, look at there, right in the middle of the crowd. I didn't see him. John, come on up if you would, please. John Loomis is the president and CEO of the Upstate Alliance. He is here to bring us his annual update. We welcome John as a good friend of the city of Greer and co-economic development advocate as well as Reno is, and does a lot of work to help further many of the efforts that are going on here in the upstate, and has worked with us closely through the years in his various roles with the upstate. An old friend and ally as well too. John, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's great seeing you. Thank you, members of council, for allowing me to speak before you today. I also want to recognize our Congressman, William Timmons, is here, and I was glad to see him. And I'm under pressure now. No, I really thank you.
Not as much as me for getting to introduce him at the front end of this meeting. So
That's true. That's true. I'm just helping, you know. I do, first of all, want to thank City of Greer and Greer Development Corporation for their support of the Upstate Alliance. Y'all have really been on board since the very beginning. And Reno Deaton does just a fantastic job in his role working on economic development. He's one of our local economic developers, and I know he's here. And he really has been very involved in our local developers group, and just does a great job. So it's a pleasure working with him. So 2020 was a big year for the Upstate Alliance as we celebrated our 20th anniversary. And the year started off great, and then things sort of changed about March 1st. We started out with ambitious plans for the year. We had a lot of great plans. We had about 33 missions, both outbound and inbound, that we were going to do. We got about 9 done, and then things kind of came to a standstill. But one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is what did happen in 2020 and how we responded as a staff and as an organization to that. First of all, 2020 announcements are really pretty good. I mean, it wasn't what we have been accustomed to over the last 3 or 4 years, but about $1.25 billion in new investment, 3,017 new jobs, and 57 total announcements. So, I mean, we were really pretty happy about that. One of the things that we did do that we were very proud of is we fulfilled a lot of requests from our public and private sector partners. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in detail later. We also worked very hard to modify our marketing materials. If you look on the left, you'll see our brochures that we use for our target market areas, the aerospace you see on top there, automotive, life sciences, advanced manufacturing. We redid all those. We also redid our main brochure, which is what you see on the right, and that took a lot of work from our staff, but we felt like it was a time, if it was going to be a little slow in economic development, that, you know, that's something that we could do. We also started really working digitally and focused on our targeted digital advertising to different constituencies across the world. We also started doing virtual events. We had a fall consultant outbound where we got together a large group of consultants from around the country, site consultants, which are those that work with companies to bring projects to different areas. And we had our local economic developers as part of that. Reno has been very participatory in those things. We also had International COI Gathering, which brought together consul generals from really the Southeast region, about, I think, 20 or 21 companies participated in that. And again, it was virtual. So we try to make it fun. We have some activities. We introduce all of our local developers to them. And then we really hear both from the site consultants as to what they're looking for, and for our local economic developers as to what, they have to offer. We did get to do a couple of things as 2020 began. We had a group from Ireland, the Irish Manufacturing Group, came over. There were about 20 representatives from that group, and we built a relationship with them over about the last 5 years. And these are companies that manufacture in the automotive space, in the aerospace area, and just in general manufacturing. And all these companies are interested in at least doing business with companies in the upstate, and at best moving a location here. So we've also continued our relationships that we have with Belgium and with the UK, and we've had a number of events during the course of the year, of course by Zoom in 2020, where we connected with those folks to try to continue what we're doing. One of the things I would say that we really ramped up on doing during 2020 was research, and helping both our public and private sector investors with research opportunities. We had 264 total research requests. Just in total, that was up 38% over any year that we've ever had. And the 135 from our public sector folks was up 61%. So you ask, what does that mean? What kind of research are we doing? We're either doing research on companies, particularly. We're helping one of our local economic developers with a request for information, or maybe demographic information. Maybe Reno would call and say, I've got a company and they want to know what the wage rates are for welders in the region, things like that. So we do a lot of research to support our local economic developers and our private sector members. One of the things I think that was a real highlight for us that continued during 2020 is that our digital searches for the term upstate South Carolina increased 22% between December of 2018 and December of 2020, which is pretty incredible. So our job is to market the upstate and to make sure that the upstate is on the map. And I think if we're increasing by 22% and having that number, hopefully we're doing something right in that regard. So I shared a little bit about what we did in 2020. I wanted to talk a little bit about how our organization has responded to change and how we can really move forward and use what we've learned to make us the best region in the country. The changes we've seen, we've come up to one conclusion, and that's that we maintain our economic health and we continue to adapt in order to stay ahead of the competition. The first thing that we've done is continue to focus on our target industries. Aerospace, automotive, what we call engineered materials, food manufacturing, and life sciences. Those are and continue to be so important to what we do in the upstate region. Particularly, I want to mention food and beverage and life sciences. During the pandemic, food and beverage companies that were operating across the world had their supply chains really damaged during COVID. You couldn't get toilet paper, you couldn't get chicken, you couldn't get all these things. And that's because people couldn't get things from the manufacturing location to our area. So as we're located in the very center of the eastern seaboard, we are in a perfect location for companies that want to manufacture and distribute to markets that are close by. We have about 100 million people within 1 day driving distance, truck driving distance of the upstate of South Carolina. So a lot of these food manufacturers and beverage manufacturers are looking at our area to locate. And also life sciences companies. We have a huge presence of life sciences companies in our region already, but we started to see a lot more of the PPE manufacturers, pharmaceutical manufacturers that wanted to look here again for the same reason. They want to be near their supply chain, and a lot of these companies are wanting to come to the U.S. so they can make their product here. The second thing that we're really starting to focus on even more is embracing innovation, from automation to technology to increasing efficiency and output to new products or processes. Intellectual property gains help build wealth. Our target industries for recruitment are ones that engage in trade, that increase efficiency at existing industries and bring more professional opportunities. It's important to recognize that technology is changing how business operates. You could see that during COVID. Everybody, not everybody, but most everyone that was working was using a lot more technology to get their job done, using Zoom, working from home, having virtual, calls. And it showed us that technology can enable people to work from anywhere. A lot of people want to work from the upstate of South Carolina because of our great quality of life, and that's been seen during the pandemic. Next, I'll talk a little bit about how we are welcoming smaller projects. You probably are used to large economic investments. Look at BMW. They've made investment after investment after investment and have helped this community tremendously. But we have started to see trends in economic development that we're seeing smaller, mid-sized companies that are looking at our market. Many of these provide technology solutions that many of them provide technology solutions that enhance existing industry operations like BMW. And they're looking to test the waters before they want to land and really expand. And one of the things that we've worked on is our landing pad initiative, and that helps smaller companies, particularly international companies, to come in and land in our region. And what we've done is at the Upstate Alliance is connect them to workspaces, the region's industry and support assets, and private service providers to help them to be successful. It's important to recognize that these smaller businesses entering the market may not make the huge splash today, but they're going to grow and grow. So what we have looked at as well is we've always done business recruitment. Now we're starting to also look at talent recruitment. How can we get people to move to the upstate to take the available jobs? So we started an initiative about 2 years ago called Move Up that combines a website with quality of life information with a job board that connects to jobs. And we started targeting 10 different regions of the U.S. and trying to get people to move here. That was when unemployment was 1.8%. When COVID came, we started looking at the need to help those people that are here that are either unemployed or underemployed. So we started an initiative called Skill Up, which is similar to Move Up. It has information about jobs, but then it connects them with the technical colleges in the area, our 4 technical colleges, and shows them what certifications and training are needed for them to get these jobs. So we've started to roll that out, and we're rolling that out throughout the area. So you'll probably be seeing billboards and things like that with Skill Up, and people can connect with that website to try to find job opportunities. The last thing I'll talk a little bit about is it's very important for us to maintain a stable business environment. During COVID, our governor, our Department of Commerce, the Accelerate SC group really made sure that manufacturing was essential and that our businesses really stayed open. And this economic success depends on a business-friendly, stable climate at the federal, state, and local levels. As the coronavirus has shown us, uncertainty is bad for business, which is bad for everyone. But one of the things that we do a lot of is advocate for good business policies, advocate to folks like our congressmen, our state legislature, and locally to make sure that we continue to be a stable business environment. So I will conclude with this. Thank you for y'all's support. We're the regional group that works to bring everybody together in the region to make the economy stronger, and we really want to help the city of Greer and this area continue to thrive and grow. And I'm glad to take any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate the update. Floor is open. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got 2 questions.
the upstate is just growing like crazy. Has your group done any, in this, I'm not going to make a claim to this thought, it's the mayor's thought, but, have you done any study of where there has been significant development? Is that translating to a wealthier community?
Yes, one of our measurements that we use, and we have lots of metrics, but per capita income and wage growth are two things that we really look at and try to measure in the area. I mean, Greer is a perfect example. I mean, since 1994, look at the number one, population growth, number two, the wage growth, and number three, the per capita income growth, just as effective BMW and what's come around that. So yeah, we track that for the whole region. And I got more data that Elizabeth Feather at our office could send you than you could ever know about those type things. So yes, we do track that.
Related to that question, and I know Reno's group has done some of this, in my limited education, our economy, the Southeast region, appears to be centered around the automobile industry. Go back to 50s, well, turn of the century, not textiles. And when labor rates locally became too high, the manufacturers said, we'll go find labor cheaper. And that's just part of business. Are in your very long-term plans, are you guys looking at changing not changing, but maybe adding to your focus of industries that you're looking at trying to bring in? Because if you on one hand, you're raising the wealth, which is wonderful, but then that raises the labor price, and at some point there's a price that the manufacturers are going to say, no, we can find it somewhere else.
Well, I mean, we certainly have I showed the different target markets. We have a diverse area of manufacturing that we're trying to bring in. And the other thing that we're really trying to work on is bringing in more innovation and technology type companies that are not going to go away, that are not going to move overseas because of the education levels and things like that. And what we have to do is get a more educated workforce. That's why we work on workforce issues to try to make sure that. I think with the automotive industry, one of the things that we've been really seeing with companies interested is electric vehicles. And I think that you're going to see the industry going more towards that. And I think the U.S. is going to be very competitive in the manufacture of electric vehicles. So I'm not as worried about the automotive industry going away necessarily, but we're making sure that we have a wide variety of types of companies that we're trying to, locate here.
Along that same line of question, have you studied, like the cost of workforce housing?
The Council on Workforce Housing.
That's this cost of workforce.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. And that's one of our problems that we have right now is that we don't have enough affordable housing for workers to come into a lot of the manufacturing locations that we have. And that's something that I think is going to be really important as we move forward. I think it's a problem in probably about half of our counties. And then the other half, they have housing costs that are lower that people will come in, but they have a hard time getting the industry to come in because they're not necessarily on the interstate. So I mean, we have the housing problem all the way across the board. But if we don't address that, we're not going to be able to continue to recruit as much industry here, especially the way housing prices are going up now.
One other question that jogged my memory. Back in 2008, when the economy was before it hit its peak, I remember Reno talking about land prices. This was more on a commercial industrial level. That land prices in our area were equal to believe, Charlotte, and maybe even Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And so the number of folks kicking tires around here had stopped, and until the economy reset and everything is back and going. Are we seeing any of that as far as the inflation of land prices becoming equal to or greater than a bigger market, say Charlotte or the Atlanta area?
I have not seen that. As a matter of fact, I was having lunch today with a real estate broker who does a lot of land, and I asked him the question, are you seeing more people wanting to invest in land here for long term, or are you seeing more on projects? It's about equal. I don't think that our land costs are near what they are in the Charlotte and Atlanta markets right now.
Mr. Loomis, we appreciate the update, and let's not make it a long time since we see each other again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thanks again for what y'all do. Thanks to Reno for what he does to work with us, and we really appreciate the relationship. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Congressman, I know you said you needed to roll out pretty close to 7, but since it's raining as hard as it is, if you'd like to take the podium for a couple of minutes and see if it subsides, we're going to give you that opportunity.
I'm only here to listen. I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm just trying to stay in touch with the community. We're so happy to be on Greer Street, on Trade Street, so love being here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I know you've got some of your staff here as well, too. You do have an office located on Trade Street, and do want to mention that. I believe you combined your Greenville and Spartanburg office to the Greer location, or have given us a higher presence than we've had in the past. So
No, we closed the Greenville and the Spartanburg office, and consolidated here, and we love it.
Okay, great. And if you're on the staff, why don't you stand and maybe introduce yourself in case anybody wants to ask for a card or whatever tonight.
Freddie Gall is the office director.
All right, good. Thank y'all for joining us.
Thank you.
Council, I guess I should have said we went outside and prayed for rain. Good bad.
We at least talked.
We did talk about it, didn't we?
Well, you said it didn't look like rain.
Yeah, we did acknowledge it didn't look like rain, so we might not be as smart as we think. Mr. Tom Faulkner, who represents the Friends of Lake Robinson, is with us this evening. He has made a request of council that I think he'll provide some more information about as he comes this evening. Mr. Faulkner, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening briefly. I'd like to see if the Friends of Lake Robinson board members could stand. So thank the Lord I'm not alone tonight in making this request to Council. To me, the request is really very relevant, more to the self-interest of the city of Greer. As you well know, today is an interesting time for Greenville County, with North Greenville County and Southern Greenville County not being zoned. And along the area where basically the city of Greer sits, Lake Robinson, that area is both zoned with the city and unzoned. And those of us who are living in some of those unzoned area are coming to the realization that incompatible land uses can take place without a lot of opportunity for us to protest. As a matter of fact, a large tiny homes community that could be as many as 350 tiny homes, which is more than the half-acre to 2-acre subdivision lots that surround that area, are actually possible. And the first 74 tiny homes have now been moving toward approval. That stimulated Friends of Lake Robinson, though, to look at a bigger issue. And that issue is that the Lake Robinson sits as one of the most important environmental, economic, and recreational resources in the Greater Greer region. And you know that well. Greer CPW knows it well. So even as some of the people in my community are petitioning Greenville County to rezone a square mile of land contiguous to the lake, we realize that unless the city of Greer, Greer CPW, the Friends of Lake Robinson, and Greenville County have a clear understanding of what they'd like to see the future development around the lake would be, then whatever effort might exist, for instance, in terms of rezoning part of that land into the county, could be undermined by the developer coming to the city of Greer and getting a whole different zoning pattern. There are a lot of other issues, as you well know, that exist in that question. Environment, density, land use, all have to be looked at with responsibility and vision. What we're asking you to consider tonight is to join Greer CPW, that has now endorsed the concept of creating a master plan in partnership with the city of Greer, Greer CPW, Greenville County, and Friends of Lake Robinson. Friends of Lake Robinson hopefully will help to bring together people in the community around the lake to ensure that they are heard in such a process. Given the capacity that already exists in your planning department, as well as Greenville County, I personally don't see that we need to be talking about a lot of money hiring some outside planning firm. Also, we have Upstate Forever, which is presently being a very valuable resource to Greenville County as they struggle with these issues just in the county. So what we're asking you to do tonight is to take a look at the resolution that Friends of Lake Robinson has passed, asking that you consider this partnership. And also Greer Commission of Public Works has passed a similar resolution. And I think, according to Commissioner Williams, that will be sent over to Mr. Merriman and the mayor for your consideration. And we will probably maybe send you a draft for consideration. And then over the next month or two, if you would consider passing a similar resolution, then our intention will be to go through Councilman Dill, who is obviously our councilman in that area for the county, and ask him through the Planning Development Committee to get a similar resolution endorsed by County Council, and then get the planners together and Friends of Lake Robinson and so on, whoever we feel should be at the table with Greer CPW, and see what we could do. So that's what I'm here to request that you consider, and I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. Council, with that presentation, obviously you don't have enough information or any information at this time to offer consideration of that, and so I've just asked Mr. Parker to come and to tee this up for you. We will have that. You'll have that information in your hands here soon, and if it is your will that we proceed in some regard on that, we will do that in a council setting. So, just wanted to have him come this evening and introduce the concept, and more information will be on the way as to what role we may or may not play in that in the future. So,
What's the difference in this land use map you're talking about, or versus what the city already has?
Very, very good question. I mean, because both you've got a master plan at the Greenville County level, you've got a land development ordinance. They're almost in sync in terms of the planning. I think the real important overlay that is being considered here is the fact that Lake Robinson is the most important economic, recreational, environmental resource in the area.
What's the difference?
I think that this is at a more detailed level than the master plan for the county of Greenville. And frankly, this is personal, but I believe that such an effort could be a microcosm that could help some of the struggles that are presently going on around these issues, with particularly with Greenville County, with your leadership and the leadership of Greer CPW, because you're right in the center.
We'll have more information for the Friends and from our staff as well, too, so we will consider that in a future meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to your board members that have been present tonight. Looks like hopefully Lake Robinson's getting some refilling here, so. Council, we are to the administrator's report tonight. Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours, sir.
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Council. Just a reminder, obviously, that Monday we will be recognizing and celebrating Memorial Day, so city offices will be closed. You also have in front of you, I think Tammy had given you some information about the Municipal Association's annual meeting. If you could fill out that information for Tammy and make sure that we get it back by this evening, I think is Tammy's preference, and if I don't, I'll be in trouble. So I'd appreciate the help there. And finally, just a bit, since we're talking about the budget, one of the things that I wanted to point out is that we do this on occasion, but we did a government auction, some things that we had that were surplus, et cetera, and managed to raise $97,000 and some change in revenue for the city by auctioning off a number of items that were no longer of use to the city. So it's a positive thing. I want to thank Tammy in particular for heading that up, but our staff for making sure that we've got all the accurate information so we can do this. And with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Council, boards, and commissions, we have a number of, or will have a number of appointments coming up. As you are aware, many of these boards and commissions, their representatives serve at our pleasure, and their terms expire on an annual, as the end of our fiscal year takes place, depending on their term. So by the end of June, we will need to replace a number of folks. I'm not necessarily sure that I need to go through all of them this evening unless you have information in that regard that you want to offer, and then we can take the appropriate action. The first one is the Greenville-Spartanburg International Airport Environs Planning Commission. Mr. Burley serves on that commission as my appointee. I have not contacted him, but he is an active member and former military pilot. I am sure that he will want to do that, but I'll need to contact him first. Have you heard from Mr. Burley in any regard? Okay, I will be in touch with him. Then on the Board of Architectural Review, Mr. Eddie Birch's term expires 6/30/2021, and Mr. Brandon Price's term expires the same date. Any action in that regard?
Yes, sir. I spoke to Mr. Birch this week. He enjoyed serving and said he'd like to continue to serve, so I'd nominate him to continue on.
Council, that comes as a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Floor's open for any discussion or question in that regard. Hearing none, Ms. Duncan.
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis.
Yes.
Ms. Albert. Yes. Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council Board of Zoning Appeals, there are a number of openings on the Board of Zoning Appeals. Any action in regards to any of the names that you see listed there this evening? Municipal Judge, Judge Hank Mims' term expires 6/30/2021. I have not had an opportunity to speak to him. I will assume he will continue to want to serve, and I think certainly we will be glad to have him continue if that is his desire. Any official correspondence from the judge in that regard? Okay. I will be in touch with him as well, too. Planning Commission, we've got 4. there as well too. Any of those names that require action this evening?
Ms. Jones is going to serve again.
District 6, Brian Martin, he is moving, so he will be moving out of District 6.
Okay.
So I will need to go ahead, and I am presently searching for somebody to take his place, but he will, I think, actually, his last time will be maybe the end of this month.
Okay. Back to Ms. Jones. Does that come as a motion?
That's a motion.
Has a motion and
Second.
and a second. Ms. Jones' term expires 6/30/2021. Motion and second. Any discussion in that regard? Questions? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council will move to items of old business. The second and final reading of ordinance number 17-2021 is before us this evening. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Roger Massengale located on North Dobson Road by 100% petition. Ms. Scotty joins us for that conversation.
Thank you, Mayor. My only update is that the Planning Commission held a public hearing on this on May 19th, and they did recommend approval.
Comes with a recommendation from Planning Commission. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
Second.
And a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you. Now, items of new business, we have a bid summary from the Blackwell Road Bridge and Timber Pile Repairs. Mr. Grant joins us for that discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You can see here pictures of Blackwell Road Bridge. Blackwell Road runs between Highway 80 and Lister Road. The DOT inspected this bridge just a little over a year ago and identified some issues with the timber pilings. We contracted with Vaughn and Melton engineers to prepare plans and specs for this repair project. The scope primarily would be timber pile repairs and some minor deck and guardrail repairs. The project was publicly advertised. The bid tab is in your packet. We had 5 contractors attend the pre-bid meeting with 3 bidders on the project. Staff recommends awarding to IPC Structures out of Hendersonville, North Carolina. Funding will be from the Road Improvement Program, or Road Improvement Fund, and it'll take about 30 days to complete the repairs with the road closure. And with that, I'll try to entertain any questions.
Comes with a recommendation from staff. I'll entertain a motion to receive. And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion or questions.
Pretty significant difference in the bids.
Yeah.
How did that happen? I mean, did you see any clear-cut reason why?
No, sir. The engineer did a cost estimate originally with the design. It was $122,000, so that was the ballpark we were looking for. And I guess the 2 lowest bids were kind of in that neighborhood, and one was kind of way out there. So no real explanation. The consultant was familiar with IPC Structures. They've done some work with them in North Carolina on some other bridges, and they felt, pretty good about that company, so we felt comfortable moving ahead.
So it's just the supports that are being repaired. What is the span made of? Is that steel?
It's concrete spans on top with timber pilings support.
What's the lifespan on concrete?
Probably 75 years for concrete. The wood pilings will be what'll go first. I mean, in theory, these repairs, they're going to cut the wood pilings out and replace it with concrete and steel, so it'll be the concrete will last for a long time to repair.
Comment? Question? Discussion?
Yes, ma'am. It's between Highway 80 and Lister Road. There's only about 5 houses on it on the Highway 80 side. Once you pass those 5 houses, all you got is this bridge for about the next half mile, 3/4 of a mile.
I'm not taking a lot, and I know where Lisa is, but then, when I was trying to visualize where that was.
Yeah, if you actually get off 290 to go on to Highway 80, the Blackwell Road cuts off, it's actually right off the entrance ramp. So, yeah, if you're not looking for it, you'll drive right by it.
Will this increase the weight capacity?
Won't increase it, no, sir.
Others? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
First reading of ordinance number 25-2021. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by REI LLC located at 103 Marchant Street from R12 to R5. Ms. Cotty?
Sure. So again, this is a request for a single parcel. It's currently zoned R12 single family residential, and they are requesting an R5 zoning. This is kind of a vicinity map. This sits kind of right outside of our core C1 Central Business District, as you can see on this current zoning map. They do have frontage on Daniel Avenue as well as Marchant Street. The existing house that's on this lot is on Marchant Street, and they intend to subdivide and put another single-family home if the rezoning is approved. For future land use map, this is in our traditional neighborhood district. And then this is a street view of the site. Again, that existing single-family home along Marchant Street, and then vacant lot at the back at Daniel Avenue. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on May 17th, and they did recommend, they held a public hearing in April. They tabled the item because the applicant wasn't present, but they did vote for approval at their May meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Show of hands, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? So noted. Ms. Gotti, that did come with a recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Yes, sir, of approval.
Ordinance 25-2021 comes with a recommendation for approval. I entertain a motion to receive.
Second.
Motion and second. Floor is open for discussion.
Has the owner or the developer indicated I guess what the architectural rendering, or are they giving anything to show you what it's going to look like, what they intend to build?
No, we have received a subdivision plat showing the 2 potential lots, but no renderings or architectural drawings.
They're not required to do that, are they?
No, sir.
Others? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes.
Mayor, going back to that, could I ask Ms. Cotty to try to provide us some, if we could get any kind of rendering from the developer as to what's going to go there before a second reading. And the reason I ask that is this area is in major transition, and I'd like to see it to stay in character of what's going on.
They did mention at the Planning Commission that they intended to do kind of a craftsman style house, but again, we haven't received that. But I can certainly ask them if they have any building plans.
Thank you very much.
First reading of ordinance number 26-2021. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Green Places LLC located at 116 Morrow Street from DRD to R7.5. Ms. Cotty?
Sure. So this is a request for rezoning for one parcel. It does front Morrow Street as well as Jackson Street. It's also bisected by Arlington Avenue. This DRD Design Review District previously came to the board as Morrow Commons, kind of a cottage concept with a courtyard. They are requesting to take it out of DRD zoning and move forward with our 7.5 single-family residential zoning. Their intent is to subdivide. This will be the portion that's below and south of Arlington Avenue into 4 to 5 single-family residential lots. Again, the zoning map, this was zoned DRD and currently is. It's surrounded by R12, although the lots of many of these are similar to R75 or R10. And then a future land use map does call for traditional neighborhood, which is our kind of higher density with a mix of products and lot sizes. This is a current street view of the property. And Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on May 17th, and they did recommend approval of R75. There was initially the applicant asked for R5 zoning. Staff recommended R10. There was very lengthy discussion with the applicant about usable area again on this lot, and their intent to do 4 to 5 lots, and ultimately the applicant and Planning Commission and staff agreed that R75 would be the most appropriate. So they did recommend approval of R75. So, again, happy to answer any questions you might have.
By show of hands, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? So noted. Entertain a motion to receive. For the purpose of discussion. Comes with a recommendation from the Planning Commission.
So moved.
I'll need a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion.
Mr. Betts, do you have an objection to this development?
I don't. I guess more neighbors would be more folks.
That's kind of the original recommendation from staff, the R10, was that just because it was more consistent with the R12 that's in that area?
Yes, and initially we thought they would be able to get the 4 to 5 lots that they wanted with that R10. But after taking out the portion north of Arlington Road, that's pretty unusable with the slope, and doing some more of the math with Planning Commission during the meeting, it seemed like R75 would be a better option, and staff still felt that that was appropriate given the future land use characterization.
Do you know if they're going to put their water retention on the other side of I guess that's Arlington?
I am not certain yet. They've just asked for the rezoning at this point. We did let them know that if they're going to do more than either 4 to 5 lots, that will trigger review from our stormwater engineer, Robert Rue. And so they have had a conversation, but I'm not sure they're quite to that point yet.
Well, everything flows to that big lot across the street, so that's probably going to be ideal.
Yeah, it's a pretty deep ravine. So.
And the DRD that we initially approved was as dense as the R7.5. Is that correct?
I believe it was even
I
denser.
think so. Okay.
I think, yeah, originally I believe it was maybe slightly more than that originally proposed for that. Motion second, some discussion. Any further questions, comments, discussion? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, next item is the first reading of ordinance number 27-2021. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by James Brady Hallfield located at 647 Blackwell Road from I-1 to R-15. Ms. Cotty?
Sure. So this is a request to rezone one parcel of land along Blackwell Road. It's very popular tonight. You can even see here where they kind of curves where the bridge that we spoke about earlier with Mr. Grant is located. So this property is currently zoned I-1 industrial. Again, the blue area that you see. The red hatching mark that you can see better in this aerial picture is the very edge of the GSP environs. It's our understanding that the applicant has spoken to the airport and they have indicated that they are okay with it as long as there's only an entrance drive into the site and no lots, no houses within that environs. This is the future land use map. It is located within a traditional neighborhood community and a portion is within a suburban commercial community. Planning Commission did hear this case and have a public hearing on May 17th, and they did recommend approval. The applicant, both the engineer and the developer, are here tonight to answer questions, and I'm happy to do that as well.
Show of hands, is the owner of the applicant, or the applicant or the owner of the property or representative with us this evening? Okay, thank you. So for reference, I see 80 on there. Where, Blackwell Road, give me a reference point there for, isn't the Maple Creek plant out there somewhere? Or am I looking at something different?
I believe this off Lister Road.
No, so yeah, that's Lister
Off
Road
Lister,
at the
okay.
top corner.
Okay, all right, yeah. I'm worried now, yeah. Council, for the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second. Floor is open for discussion.
Is the development of the property imminent?
I'd have to defer to the applicant on that one.
If one of the applicants would like to speak.
Good evening. I'm Melanie Giles. I'm with Blue Water Civil Design. I'm happy to answer any questions. We do have currently an 89 lot development planned for this parcel.
You have to know the contract.
I do not. I actually asked that right before the meeting and they said to be determined. So the market's fluctuating so much right now, so it's hard to put a price on anything.
What did the Airport Environs Commission, what did they say? I see where that part of the property is.
Correct. They were only concerned that we didn't put any lots or any structures in that area as long as it was low lying.
For the entire hatched area, or just the sliver down there in the sliver?
The little sliver right at that
Okay,
black
okay.
line.
All right, yeah, okay. And the homes that adjoin it there, that is, what area is that? I can't see the name of it. Across, go back there towards.
Sunny Glen.
Oh, okay.
Part of Sunny Glen's not in the city.
Is it going to have connectivity off of Sunny Glen Drive?
No, it will only have connection to Blackwell Road. There is one main entrance and there will be one emergency access.
And how will the traffic typically flow? Because I think it's difficult to get off of 290 to get into this property. Is that correct? Or is there a railroad track, or is there something that you have to cross if you come in on the, I guess that'd be the south side of this parcel?
The railroad tracks don't actually touch this parcel. It's across the road from where we'll be.
When you come off of that exit ramp on 80, does it dump right onto Blackwell Road right there?
I am not familiar enough with the area to really be able to say.
It does? Yes. Okay. I didn't realize that. So they don't, I guess the reason I'm asking that question, that in other words, they come in on that side, they're not going to have to wait on the train? Or are they?
No.
No?
It does cross, you do have to cross the track off, but once you get off the exit ramp, there's a track right there.
Okay.
Let's see the settings, right?
I just wonder if the way that ramp is designed, if it gives folks, because there's going to be a good bit of traffic obviously flowing into that neighborhood, I'm just, I'd be a little concerned that traffic could back up off that exit ramp back onto 80. Potentially. I think there's only, the ramp is only one way in and one way out.
We haven't seen the plan yet, so that's good.
Okay.
And they will be required to do a traffic study once they get to that point.
Yes, and we actually have one in the works.
I went to Blackwell Road, Steve. What is it rated? Do you know, as far as our?
I don't know the rating, but it's in pretty good condition.
It's just narrow, correct?
Yes, it's not 24 feet.
How many homes did you say you were going to do?
It would be 89.
80.
That's the current design, but we haven't gone to planning commission or anything with the preliminary plat, so it's correct.
Yeah, and just given the acreage and the zoning that they're requesting, the maximum that could possibly go on the site would be 140. But given site constraints, it is more likely to be kind of in that 90 to 100 range.
I'm sorry, what did you say? Would limit the count?
So the maximum, just based on just acreage and how many square footage of the lot, would be a maximum of 140 homes. But just given some of the constraints of the site, it is probably more likely to be in this 90 to 100 range. But just given the R15, just division of acreage by square foot lots, that is the maximum that could go on the site.
And by constraints, you mean the topography?
In the back, there's
Significant amount of floodplain.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is the bridge going to be before that or after that? After.
The bridge is about where the purple and yellow is.
Okay.
Others? Questions? Comments? Thank you for the information. We appreciate it. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Cody. Council, we've come to the last item of business this evening, which is the first reading of the ordinance number 28, 2021. This is the City of Greer Budget Ordinance Fiscal Year 2021-22. This is an ordinance relating to the fiscal affairs of the City of Greer, South Carolina, making appropriations, therefore levying taxes, and to provide an effective date. To help us in this conversation, I would like to offer my intent as we move forward here for the purpose of discussion at the appropriate time. I would ask for a motion and a second to get the ordinance on the floor for the intent of discussion. I will ask Mr. Merriman to give any oversight, additional information, or any comments that he would like to make. Then, after that, I think it appropriate that each one of us have an opportunity to address the ordinance as proposed. I'd like to do that by council district, so we will start with Mr. Arrowood. Each council member will be allowed to speak to the ordinance. in whatever regard that you would like to. Then after that, we will open the floor for discussion. As you are aware, amendments to the motion would need to be made in that regard. We would need to vote on whether or not to accept that amendment. Then if it is successful, then we would vote in regards to the actual amended ordinance. So to keep this as straightforward as we possibly can, I'd like to do that. I see that David, Mr. Seifert and Ms. Howell have joined us this evening as well, too. If it is appropriate, Mr. Merriman, that there is additional information that staff would provide, that is fine. But let's, unless there is some objection, that would be how I would like to proceed. Any objection to that? Well, hearing none then, first reading of ordinance number 2821. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
For discussion.
For discussion, yes.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Now, the floor is open for discussion. I'd like to ask staff, Mr. Merriman in particular, if he would like to open this discussion, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. A couple housekeeping items that have changed since we met on last Tuesday. Let me back up real quick. For David and Susan, again, I want to thank those two for their hard work on this, and the department heads and the staff. Again, this is a labor that we do every year, every local government does, and it's taken seriously. And so I just want to thank them again for their hard work. As far as just a couple updates, in the transmittal letter I provided at the beginning of the week, there's a couple changes I want to point out. The first one is specific to the independent or the increase to employee contributions to the healthcare program. What I had in the transmittal letter was $28.76 for employee family, $26.14 for employee spouse, and $23.53 for employee with child. We are now recommending that be lowered to $19.75 employee family, $17.96 employee spouse, and $16.16 for employee with child. But what we've asked also is, in making this change, is that we're going to request the council amend also that was in the transmittal letter, the 1.23% COLA adjustment for for all of our employees to be 1.78. So from 1.23 to 1.78, and that the 3% pool of money to be distributed for merit to be lowered from 3% to 2.45. From the bottom line standpoint, it doesn't make a difference. From a budgetary standpoint, the reasoning behind that is that we wanted to make sure that that the COLA at least covered the increased insurance for some of our lower paid employees. So that's why we are making and recommending that change for council. It doesn't have a significant impact on the budget at all. I'm just wanting you to know that there's a difference in the transmittal letter versus what we're requesting in this budget. And so other than that, David, I didn't miss anything else. It was a housekeeping item. So back to just the general comments, Mr. Mayor and Council.
So your new insurance rates, you're lowering the increase?
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm lowering the increase. Yes, sir. Yes. The intent, sir, is we will need to spread it out, but we felt like that that was just a little too much for this year, that we were willing to push down on the employees. So, yes, sir, we are lowering the increase. Now, as far as general comments goes, again, staff has gone through this budget, and the budget that you have in front of you is a little bit different. And we covered this in the workshop, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but what you've got is 3 separate millage pots: a operations millage pot, a debt service pot, and a infrastructure pot. We have a 2.2 mil increase in the budget that is in front of you. The intent of that increase is to fully fund the general obligation bond debt, whereas before it was coming out of our operations or really just out of our general millage. And then we've asked for an increase in millage for infrastructure. We've taken this budget and cut to about $2.5 million out of it already from a request to a submittal to you. And in that budget is also a significant increase just in operations alone of a little over $100,000 to paving. So we think that this budget reflects what we've heard from council over the last 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months or so. And we're ready now to hear from you and prepared to answer questions and make any changes that you feel are necessary. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to leave it to you.
Thank you, sir. With that, then let's move to individual comments in regards to the proposed budget for 28-2021. We will do that by council district, and then we'll open the floor for general discussion. Mr. Airwood, if you would like to proceed.
Sure, thank you. Just want to go back to what some of the questions I had asked or statements I made during our last meeting, and I'm just going to go by the handwritten notes I have here. But one of the positions that we looking at funding is project manager, and I had made the recommendation that project manager, the responsibilities would not only be managing new projects, but as a maintenance manager for our facilities. Has that been discussed as far as a...
Well, Mr. Airwood, as it happens, we were very excited 3 weeks ago to have brought a new maintenance supervisor on board, and yesterday we accepted his resignation. So with that being said, the project manager position, as important as I believe it is, needs to be looked at in light of this vacancy. So I don't have a firm recommendation at this time. My request to council remains the same. I think the value of the position is apparent. The question now is going to be, how do we then either meld this project manager's position with the now vacant position, or even add perhaps another public service worker 2-level position to do some work. So I say all that to say that Mr. Grant and Mr. Sell and I have yet to put our heads together on charting a path forward. So that's a little bit up in the air, in all honesty, sir.
Now, realize the maintenance manager that I'm referring to is not a hands-on person. That would be an individual who manages the facilities, the systems that run the facilities, and I mean, it's many projects he is managing, but he's not wearing a tool belt.
No, yes, sir, and that's where we're going with that. I think there's a way to accommodate that need, but then having the proverbial gentleman with the tool belt that's actually doing the work. So there may be an opportunity to modify that position to a lower grade trades person that can do that work, and then have the higher level administrative project management and administrative facilities management work will need done.
Okay. Personnel, you also have 2 pro shop attendants. I'm assuming that's for the golf course?
It is, yes, sir.
The statement that I'll make is about the golf course is this. In our pro forma, we knew that first couple of years we were going to be operating at a loss. I believe the 3rd year we were going to be breaking even. In years 4 and 5, we would be paying back the money that we supplemented the golf course fund. We are triple over what we expected to be as far as in a deficit situation with the golf course, and I know some of that can be attributed to the COVID and maybe some of the much needed renovations. But we're triple over budget, or triple, however you want to look at it. And I think, and I'm not sure every effort has been made to market the course, the facilities, everything that we can. I don't believe that we have the memberships. I mean, I don't know anything about operating a golf course, but if your facilities or if your course is going to be limited in play just because of renovations, it looks like to me you try to at least sell memberships on a reduced amount, let that reduced amount go beyond when everything is up and running, and so there's some value to that from people buying it. Having said all of that, if 2 pro shop attendants is what is needed, then that's fine. But I think I believe every effort needs to be made to market the course, the facilities, because we can't continue to operate like this. I mean, that's for sure. Whatever we need to do, whether it's staff realignment, I think that's important. QRV for the fire department. I'll take this a minute right now. The budget reflects what council and we've talked about and staff or department needs, I believe. But then jumping back to the QRV program for the fire department, this to me, give me that amount again that
We've increased that budget by, and I'm going to look to David to correct me, but if you go to the overtime budget in the fire department in Fund 11, you're going to see a requested $256,000 increase, a recommended $270,000. So what we've done, and if I'm not mistaken, we're covering portion of that request with overtime. And David, you moved that remaining $100,000 or so, or $90,000 somewhere.
In that department line item, the requested amount, the $356,000, is what came in from the department. And after we did some further analysis of, part-time staff versus full-time working overtime, doing some realignment, and then doing some more specific mathematical calculations, we feel we could cover that program with that reduced rate at 270.
I thought we had split it for some reason, but yeah, that's to reflect a 60-hour week, Monday through Friday.
And so that's the equivalent of a meal and a half. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. A little over. In my opinion, this is a tax from the counties that, because they have not funded EMS to keep up with the growth. And so fire departments, our city, have been asked to take up the slack. And we have. And so the county indirectly has, in this budget, they're costing us 1.5 meals for something that maybe not all of it, but a good bit of it is a result of their inaction, and that needs to me, we need to address it with the counties. I don't put a lot of faith in anything coming from them, but I do think that needs to be addressed. I believe that's the dedicated meals to the roads. I think that's wonderful. I don't really have an objection to the 1.1 mil increase that would be dedicated directly to roads. And the other 1.1 mils, that would be going to the dedicated fund, for debt service, correct?
Yes, sir.
I think there's some places that, and I've mentioned everything I need to mention, so that's all.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Griffin?
This is one of the budgets I've struggled with. I like it, but I just can't support a millage increase at this time, given all that's going on in the past year. So I can't support a millage increase. Now, I disagree with Councilman Airwood as far as the golf course goes. I think that we have a jewel in the golf course, and I disagree with him, and I agree with him. I want to find a way that we can get it to where it's self-sustaining, but I think when all is said and done, that would be one of the better things that we as a council did. And also, as far as the new positions, I think this is a good creative way to look at bringing our project manager in to help free some of our staff that are running projects now, such as Ann that had to do a project. If we got somebody that can free her to do other things, I think that's a good way of looking at it. And I also like the fact that you went back and gave some thought to the CPI for the employees and lowering that for some of our lower employees, so that it'd be such a strain on, given what a lot of our employees that went through with COVID and that, that I imagine for some of the lower end employees, it's been tight for them. But other than that, that knuckle boom I wanted to make, I like that idea too about public services, using the knuckle boom and taking some of that off of our garbage collector. I think that's a good idea too. And that's pretty much all I got to say about it.
Thank you, sir. I'm making notes as we go, I'm sorry. Mr. Hopper?
I think what I appreciate about the budget that, as you presented, is it addresses a lot of needs and issues in a balanced way. I believe that's been done well with the budget. Things like the project manager, I appreciate the kind of the outside the box thinking, at least from my perspective, where that's concerned. I believe that has real return on investment for the taxpayers. Just to make sure that all these things that we have going on, and more as we move forward, I think done right with the right person, they can really bring a lot of value to the table to bring quality, but also to help us save money over the long term as well. Things like the QRV, obviously, Mr. Arrowwood, you have great passion for this area and a knowledge base that certainly I don't have. I think your point is well made where the county is concerned. I guess in my thinking, that's already been the case, right? We've already been filling that void. And so it's either stop filling it or figure out how for us to fill it in the most cost-effective way. But I totally agree with what you're saying. It makes total sense. I guess where we are is what do we do about it now? And if this is the most cost-effective way for us to do that from a personnel standpoint, from an equipment standpoint, I appreciate the idea as it's been brought forth in the budget that way. I greatly appreciate the strong commitment to infrastructure and paving. the discussion's been pretty compelling as to the trajectory that we've been on with our roads, and it's not sustainable. Certainly what I heard a little over a year and a half ago from my constituents was roads, right? I think we all hear that to one degree or another. There's roads in our community that we don't have really the ability to do anything about, where they're county and state maintained, but those that are ours, I think it behooves us to make sure that we are doing what we can, at least at bare minimum, to maintain, but then over time figure out a way to improve them to our constituents' standards as well. And so I appreciate the commitment to paving that the budget reflects. I think that the big thing on our minds is the millage increase. I am not a fan of any form of tax increase. I would say my understanding of where we are as I've thought about this myself is, we have a lot of growth going on. I know in each one of our minds we're trying to figure out, how does growth continue to fund some of these things? But the reality is there's cost that we're incurring because of our growth, providing more services broadly, but at the same time, we're seeing an increase in the cost to provide the services to our existing citizenry as well. And so I think, the feedback that I've gotten from my constituents so far is, a small carved out, dedicated portion of millage, even if there's a small increase for the first time in over a decade, being dedicated to roads specifically, that is a piece that I could support. I think where my big hang up at the moment would be the millage increase to address the debt piece of it. So beyond that, that's my thoughts in that regard. But again, I appreciate the work that's been done. I know there's challenges and opportunities, but I believe that the budget as presented does justice to those challenges and opportunities in a balanced way and in a prudent way with our taxpayers' money.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dumison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Glad we had the Blackwell Road Bridge discussion tonight. I think this makes the point that I was trying to make last week on infrastructure. We have a bridge that essentially services almost nothing out there that we just dedicated $90,000 to fix. And we have a development that's going to build 90 houses in there. And we have no way to capture any of the impact that new development is having on our roads right now. And I really think we need to start to consider having some type of, I don't know if it's an impact fee or an infrastructure fee or whatever it is. And I think the way Mr. Merriman and staff have dedicated those dollars to infrastructure is spot on, and we need a dedicated source for that. And I really think that the wear and tear on the roads is coming from the development. And I mentioned this at our last meeting. We had 1,000 new starts for single-family new construction last year. If we added a $400 fee to each one of those, that would be the $400,000 that the 2.2 mil increase would bring in. And that's really where I'd like to see the dollars coming from. And I really struggle with the millage increase in this particular budget, because based on the reassessment that I think we just had, was that from Greenville County? We just had the reassessment. That took the value of a mill from 152 to 180, and if you do the math on that times 98 mills, that brought in an additional $2.75 million of revenue for the city. So I really struggle with the fact that we just brought in close to $3 million, and yet we're recommending a millage increase with this budget. As far as the golf course is concerned, I am with Jay on this. I really think we have got to do something drastic and different at the golf course to change the mentality. This is not a country club anymore. This is a city club. This is a municipal course, and things have to change. I see it kind of like churches that I've seen in our community through the years that just kind of have died on the vine because they didn't support the youth and they didn't support their children's ministries. And I believe the golf course is kind of in the same kind of situation at this point. I really want to see a vibrant junior golf program, the First Tee program, Ladies Golf Association. I want to see all those programs growing and robust and supported at the golf course, because to Wayne's point, I do believe this is going to be a gem for the city, or could be, if it's done properly. It can't be business as usual. It has got to shift in a drastic way, and we've got to make some serious changes and some serious upgrades and updates to what's happening there. And I hope that once we make this investment and the front side gets repaired, that we will have a very strong plan in place that addresses those issues. Let's see if I had anything else here. I did have a question. Jay brought up a good point about are we subsidizing EMS with our fire service? We always have that, how we figure out how long it takes for us to respond and different things like that, so we can gauge the quality of service. Is there any way to objectively measure the quality of service for the EMS as far as the county's concerned?
Are you asking if the city can objectively measure the quality of service that we're getting from the county? Is that what you're asking?
Or are those objective measurements available?
Yeah, so yes, if we asked the county, they could provide us data on response times. And those metrics are probably available. I can tell you just anecdotally that there has been a number of instances where call responses have been delayed by just lack of available personnel and vehicles to move people. So I think, to answer your question, yes, we can get whatever data you need from the county. I think anecdotally, I can probably point to 2 or 3 in the last month where we've actually had to transport someone to a hospital outside of an ambulance. So yes, sir, those things are happening. But also one thing to be considered, though, is the changing nature of the fire service. The fire service in general, nationally, is not just so much fire, but it's all hazards, and it has dramatically increased. So we have trained personnel on the ground that can respond, but we're not designed to transport. So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but sometimes the quickest response is from your local fire department.
I don't have anything else right now. I look forward to the debate or whatever we have here in a few minutes.
Mr. Bettis, David, refresh my memory again. How many years in a row have we rebated excess revenue to the employees at the end of the budget?
That's probably, again, going off of memory, it's probably been 8 to 10 years.
I'd say at least. And how much last year did we, you told me if I forgot.
It's capped at 2% of the salary, which is it was about 225,000, I think.
Which means approximately how much of the entire pot of excess revenue went back into the city pot?
Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been increasing fund balance by $1.5 to $3 million as a range each year.
Okay, and that's totally what we fund that with is excess revenue?
Correct.
And how much? About $1.5 million?
Yeah, the range over the last several years for fund balance increases is, $1.5 to $3 million each year.
Was that to bring us up to what we ordained our fund balance to be, or was that in addition?
That was in addition to the 35% target that we have set under financial policy, but with the intent for all of that surplus to fund the construction going on downtown for the streetscape, the garage, and the art center. To fund, those were, 10, 16, 18. They've turned out to be about $24 million in projects, and we only borrowed 12. So those excess revenues that we've been banking each year, we did intentionally to pay for the excess funding that we did not borrow for the projects.
And how do we stand now as far as funding? Are we in good shape, or are we going to need more?
The funding to finish paying out the projects, we're in good shape. We have utilized, or we have expended all of the funds that we've borrowed. And looking at the projects, I have to look to Susan. She manages that spreadsheet a little closer than I do each day. But looking at the projects that are still out there, I think we have between $2 and $3 million still to expend.
And that'll be the extent of it?
For the projects that we have on the books for those downtown, yes, sir.
How about, when you say downtown, you're talking the apartments, streetscape, everything?
That's for the garage and streetscape. And we have a few little items outstanding on the art center. The development agreements that we have in place are, if you remember, at the end of 2020, we did an $8 million GOB bond, and that was funding a portion of, or the majority of phase 2, which we're currently paying out now, and of the streetscape and the development projects.
Okay, do you foresee any more borrowing?
Not in the near future, unless we get more projects or development agreements coming in. And that would be, incumbent upon those decisions.
Well, and in addition to all that, we've always had that excess, not always, but for a great deal of the time, we've had an excess to rebate to our employees, which appears to be well over $1 million. I like mills to operations, not operations, but to debt and to infrastructure. I can support that. But for an enterprise that has continued, at least throughout my tenure, except for the hardest of times, to, for lack of a better term, show a profit, I just, in good faith, I cannot support a millage increase at this time. What we're talking about is 2% of this budget. And if I was a department head and I couldn't go through here and trim 2% off my budget numbers, I'd have to question my methods. I think we can reward employees. I think we can support them with the necessary equipment and knowledge that they need. But I also believe that there's at least 2% fat in this budget that could be trimmed. I could be wrong. But I don't believe that there's a necessity for a millage increase at this time. Everybody here made great points. I support the golf course. I think better days are ahead of it. I think Jay's exactly right. It needs promotion. It needs somebody who is a very good promoter.
That's right.
As far as the quick response vehicle program, I believe if it works, we can show probably an offset in savings of not rolling the big truck. And if we put the pressure on the county, maybe even better, maybe even more than just a savings. The position of project manager, I agree with Jay. I think it should be a multifaceted thing. I think it should, because we're not always going to have major projects, I don't believe. And if they have the responsibility of triggering maintenance, not doing maintenance, but saying, okay, somebody has to service the chill unit for City Hall on these days or whatever. I just think I think it'd be a great position, and I just believe it's something that could be spread a little more broader than just project manager. That pretty well covers my leanings. if we're dead set on raising millage, I'd rather see it ramp up than bust it with 2.2 right off the bat. That's just me.
Okay, well, I think everybody's about said everything covered. Glad I'm at the end. But no, I did have a couple of questions. And I had looked at the different 3 new titles that were set up and was just wondering if maybe, one thing I wanted to ask, are those planned for in-house? I mean, already existing employees, or was this a new hire or promotion or either or?
The new positions, I'm sorry.
The new positions like the project manager
Mm-hmm.
and the commercial reviewer and the resident.
Yeah, so those are new positions that we currently do not have. So the other 8 positions that you've got would be additional personnel that already fall under our class and comp. These would be 3 new grades of people. You follow? So for instance, in the police department, we've got 2 corporals. We already have a corporal position. This, what you see in front of you, would be a new project manager, which we currently don't have, a commercial plans reviewer, and a residential plans reviewer. Those 3 are currently, they don't exist in our system.
So they will not be given to people already in-house?
Oh, no.
They will be new hires?
Well, yeah, I mean, through our hiring process, yeah, anybody can apply for those positions, but then that'll just create a vacancy.
You don't have that in place?
Oh, no.
Okay. So I did want to ask about that, and there again, I think some of it had been mentioned about combining. I was looking at maybe even a combination of the commercial plan reviewer and the residential plan. I don't know that, and maybe we have more commercial planning going on than I would know. And one thing I did want to mention also is I'm glad you changed the salary adjustments. I think that sounds more fair, and especially with the economy and everything going up like it is. So I think it's more fair to spread it out a little more to, So I did like that. And I wanted to check, because I know this keeps coming up, do we know anything yet about the recycle center?
Yes, ma'am. What we know about it right now is there's some work being done that'll actually save us a little bit of money. We've had some issues with our compactor and the stuff that goes into the compactor as far as the mechanical stuff, and we've not been able to compact at the level we need to, so our hauling costs have increased. But right now, we're working with our current contractor. They're investing in the compactor to make sure that we get it up and running, so that should save us a little bit of money. We've budgeted in excess this fiscal year, but that remains to be seen.
And what about the $516,000 for the recycling, the center earthwork and paving? Is that going to be us, or is that been negotiated?
We have put that money in there in the event that we need it to do that work out there, but right now, and through working with our contractors, a number of unknowns right now. The work needs to be done, and we estimate right now that would cover what needs to be done out there. Now, how it ends up getting done, whether it's something that's a cost that's borne by the contractor or some shared cost or something along those lines, we're currently working through, but we know that amount of work needs to be done.
And going along with Jay, I know we talked about it last Tuesday, was with the number of new construction and all going in. Agree there that we should, even though it's always true that we have new people coming in, so we're going to have more on the roads, we're going to have more people to pick up trash. We're going to have more policing areas to take care of. So with growth, there also comes a lot more responsibilities. But I do feel like a lot of it could go towards our budget, helping to increase that.
Yes, ma'am.
So because I, of course, am opposed to millage increase too. And I know this takes a lot of time and a lot of work, probably from the start of 1 year to the very next year, trying to get it out. So I think it's, I certainly wouldn't be able to do it in a
Well, first of all, thank you to Mr. Merriman and our entire staff for the work that they have they have put into this, to your point. It doesn't happen by itself, and there are hard decisions made at every level before this even comes to us. And so I appreciate the time that has been spent already on this issue, and thank you for what y'all have done. Thank you for what you do on a day-to-day basis and a regular basis. In addition to that, I want to both thank and commend our council. I don't know which one of you mentioned it. I've got it in my copious notes here somewhere, but I think somebody said they had struggled mightily with this with this budget. This is one of the first times in a number of years that I have seen this council engage in the kind of depth of review and study that is worthy of a budget this size and that continues to grow. I will admit that we had, I guess, maybe fallen victim to our success in some regards, and a balanced budget was always easy for us to come in here and to agree on. And to Riley's point, I think that debate and discussion of ideas and ways to be more efficient are always welcome and or good dialogue for us to have. And to have communicated with every one of you on some basis about this, and some of you in frequent calls and conversations, it made it clear and evident that there was a good deal of time and effort spent on this. I don't think that it is as dire in some cases as we thought early on. I think there is agreement here. We've heard some of that tonight, and while there are certainly concerns in any budget of this size, there are always going to be concerns, and that's the way this process works. I have jotted down some comments over the last week or so in regards to this budget that I'd like to share. More in a sort of 30,000-foot view kind of things than specifics, because I've realized as we have talked, as you would imagine, there are 7 of us, and we come at this process from various different backgrounds and with various different views, and we attack it in various different ways. And so I just want to share some things that I think are of interest to us, and hopefully that we can keep in mind as we move forward in this discussion and create a workable budget that serves this city in the way that it deserves to be funded. I know we have talked a lot about growth over the last several years, and without a doubt we will continue to talk about growth. One of the things that Mr. Merriman and I frequently talk about is growth and growth issues. It's not just about the number of people that are moving here. That is important, but our conversations are more about how we best serve our citizens in the future. And the future is certainly upon us. We realize that as we continue to grow to a point that has been made many times tonight, the services that we offer sometimes do not have a direct relationship to the amount of money that we take in. And so we have to be cognizant of the fact that we are quickly outgrowing our facilities in some regards. We have certain needs that will always be prevalent in our community, from things that are as simple and basic as new gym facilities and ball fields to additional manpower in the police department, the public services department, the recreation department. We've got to consider, how our fire services operate in stations. Vehicles are always an issue. Insurance costs are a continuing issue as they climb in that regard. Sometimes even beyond the controls that we are able to place on that. Sanitation is something that we have had discussions about. Employee benefits, legacy costs, maintenance, programming, and even the dreaded conversation around streets. All of those things are issues that we are going to face that are beyond the scope of simply just growing in number, and how we fund those and how we plan for those becomes critically important. We've grown between 27 and 30% in population in the last decade alone, and I suspect another 25 to 30% in the next decade is not unreasonable to imagine. Hard to believe, but that would push our population nearly to 50,000 people. We are a long ways from where many of us started in these seats, and it brings with that a different conversation. We have come a long way in these debates, but we have got a long way to go in terms of the things that we are going to have to determine how we're going to fund through our budget. But even at the rate of growth that we see occurring, we can't count on that growth to fund the growing needs entirely that we are going to face in the next 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 years. Ad valorem tax only accounts for a percentage of our budget. So there is a large percentage of our budget that we have to figure out ways to close the gap. And I think that is something that we've done a good job on, but we also have to realize that as we discuss impact fees and other methods to capture money from new development or to dissuade that growth, even those efforts may not address budget issues that we have because they are not intended to be used to balance a budget. The cost of maintaining roads and facilities and programming and other essential and quality of life amenities are the responsibilities of all our citizens, whether you lived here a year or 90 years, and we all participate in that. I think one of the things that we have fallen victim to in some regards is that we want to victimize growth and to blame it on a myriad of problems. But we all also have to realize that if it weren't for the certain level of growth that we have witnessed in our community over the last 20 years, our millage increases would have occurred on a much more regular basis and at a much higher rate, or we would have determined that we were going to cut services. Regardless of your philosophy and how you come to this discussion, in this new current budget, I would ask that you consider any changes or amendments be painted with a broad brush. We've got a lot of good ideas. You've obviously spent a lot of time tackling many of the things that are before us. But what I would suggest is that we not get hung up on 1,000 small changes, but rather look at this in a way that I think can have impactful change on our community. We are partially not divided, but we are partially perplexed, I guess, in some regard by the fact that This is a different philosophy. This is a different way of budgeting than we have had in the past. And quite honestly, budgeting is not that difficult. You determine your income and you prioritize those dollars, and then you stick with your plan. I think the problem that we have had with this particular budget has not been the way that we have formulated it, and certainly not politically, but our philosophy of how we go about it. I know that my personal philosophy is much like the old car commercial. You can pay me now or you can pay me later. I'd rather raise millage as a necessity on a regular basis than wait till somewhere down the road and have to increase it at a substantial rate. But I realize that my philosophy is different from yours, and it doesn't mean that one is better than the other. As Ed used to say, he was just baking a pie, and all he needed to know was how to slice it up. In this new administration, we're still baking the pie, but Andy has asked us to cut it into 3 sections and then slice it up from there. So I think that's part of what we've run into is simply how we look at it. I appreciate again the time and the effort that you have placed in this. It indicates a maturity that comes from a council that's been together for many years and has gone through this process a number of times, and I think that we will get to where we need to go in an appropriate fashion, and I look forward to that debate. With that, then, I will open the floor for any additional comments or any additional thoughts, anything that may have occurred to you that you'd like to throw back out. Maybe you didn't get it in on the first run. We will discuss where we are. We have a ordinance before us. We have ordinance number 2821, and I will entertain amendments to that motion if you would like to propose that, and then we'll move on from there. So the floor is open for discussion at this point in time.
Well, I'm going to tell you something I did leave out, and Councilman Airwood brought it up, and Councilman Hopper expounded on it, because it does burn my crowd that Greenville County gets out, of us with the EMS thing, And I'm of the mindset, I'm like him. I think that he brought it up, and that's good. That it's something that needs to be on our radar, but we need to find a solution to it. Even if it means sending them an invoice, because we're paying for it anyway. So send you an invoice, whether you pay it or not, it's on our radar. You know what I'm saying? And maybe that's a way to get you to look at that formula, because I imagine that formula was they did it years and years ago, and they don't have any problem with the formula because it's working just fine for them. They do what they do, and we pick up the slack. Everything's fine. But I think we need to find a way to put that pressure on them, because in the end, it's millage. Just like he said, it's millage.
I think we all agree. You're preaching to the choir.
Okay.
So, we have.
That's just one of many things.
Yeah,
We've tilted this windmill a time or two before,
Yeah.
and there's no easy answer to this. I think that there is, the conversation needs to be had at some point in time. And that may be an opportunity for us to sit down with our county council brethren and see if there's any agreement on this at all. But I would agree. I think out of sight, out of mind, and it's not high on their list.
We're
Not squeaky enough of the wheel.
Not a squeaky enough wheel. Council, the floor is open. I have an amendment that I would offer to council, but we'll leave the floor open for any other comments at this point in time. It may be that we want to consider more than one amendment, but I came prepared this evening to make an amendment that I know that from hearing each of you speak, may be some support for, and if there's adequate, there may be a place to start with the first reading. If it's not, then we'll need to move forward from there.
I'd like to say one thing. I was listening to what the mayor said about growth, and I don't want you to think, when I'm talking about impact fees or infrastructure fees or anything like that I'm demonizing growth in any way, shape, or form. I think it's much needed. We have a significant housing shortage right now. We just truly have so many people. We don't have enough houses to put them in. And so I think, but I will say to keep in mind that most people are looking at payments with houses and adding an additional $400 to $500 to, a $250,000 to $300,000 house is insignificant in the eyes of most buyers, and would be a great steady source of revenue for us moving forward. And I think it's something we should seriously consider. And I wanted to touch on what Riley said too about the 2%. I mean, I've actually done the math as far as if we don't approve the millage increase, the value of the 2.2 mills is $396,000, and the total budget is $33 million. So if you do the math on that, that's really only a reduction of about 1.2%. So it's not as significant as a 2% trimming of the fat, if you will. So it's not as substantial as far as that's concerned.
I think it's ever since I came on council, the number one issue for me has always been growth, and it will continue to be growth, because we'll live or we'll die with it. We've got to manage it, and part of managing the growth is how do you pay for the wear and tear? And wear and tear is the roads and the bridges and things like that. And we voted to fund the repair of a bridge, and I asked last week, I believe, how many bridges do we have? We really don't know, but just so happens I was talking to the mayor the other day as I was driving on an unrelated matter, and I crossed a bridge that I know that's in the city, and I know it needs some work on, but because it's actually, in my opinion, dangerous, not in danger of collapse, but you could definitely run off of it. And so, however we decide to move forward, I think what is really important to me is that we keep the funding for the infrastructure as budgeted. Of course, the hard part is how are we going to fund it? Through millage or through other cuts? But I think that's important as we do move forward.
I agree. Well, one way or the other, it needs to stay. The funding for the infrastructure needs to stay the same. To your idea, Lee, I really appreciate that. I can get behind that and support that. I guess my concern is, the way you're describing it is it's a reliable, steady thing. What happens when we're not on pace for 1,500 starts a year, and trying to figure out what does that look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what's that going to look like? It's impossible to know that. So again, the way I'm coming at it is funding the expanding of the number of people and number of properties we're providing services to, but also the increasing. It's costing us more for gas. It's costing us more for health insurance. It's costing us more for the cost for the services we're already providing. If we didn't add another housing start in the city, those costs are still going to be going up. And is the mill going to keep up? Maybe, maybe not, right? And so just making sure we keep that quality of service funded for who's already here, right? But I think what you're saying, I think, can absolutely enter the equation to be part of that solution.
I agree, just a piece of the revenue pie. I think that the infrastructure piece should stay in place, and I think it's obviously very important. I mean, when Mr. Grant does an objective study and indicates that we've got issues with our roads and bridges, and, that's something obviously we need to address. And I like the way we've got these funds set up now to where we know that there are dedicated dollars to get us back on track in that department and where we need to be. Because I certainly don't want to start receiving complaints from people saying the roads are bad, and I can't go to them and say, well, it's not our roads. It's the counties or the states.
A question of legislation. If the budget were to pass as is, where we've got dedicated millage for roads, is that in ordinance form? Does it say that these amount of mills are going to always be placed in that budget?
They will be, yes, sir. The ordinance specifically gives those three pots. And if you want them in next year's ordinance, they'll be in next year's ordinance. My intent is to maintain that pattern moving forward. But of course, as the legislative body, y'all can make those amendments from year over year.
I jotted these down earlier this week because, to Mr. Hopper's point, and I simply didn't inject it into our conversation earlier, but let me give you a quick overview of the point that he just made. Today's prices are 1.22 times higher than the average price in 2010, according to the Bureau of Statistics Consumer Price Index. A dollar today buys 82% of what it did in 2010. 2010 inflation rate was 1.64. The current year-over-year inflation rate for 2020 and 2021 is now 4.16. If this number holds, a dollar today will have a buying power of only $1.04. This effect explains how inflation erodes the value of the dollar over time. In other words, the 2010 dollar is worth 20% less than in 2021. If that trend continues, which is a downward trend line, that is only going to get worse in the next 10 years. So we've got to understand that it's not simply a matter of where the money comes from, but what value it has to us and our buying power as well. And that's always an interesting dilemma. And to Mr. Bettis' point, where we need to be mindful of those costs and how they're applied within our organization. Council, I would like at this point, if you would allow me, it's not something that I typically do, but feel tonight in light of the fact that there has been at least an indication that there may be some consensus around some millage that would be dedicated entirely to one of the buckets, and I certainly would encourage us to keep this approach would be to offer an amendment, if you would allow me, to our budget ordinance. And if you would, I'd like to offer that as an amendment. My amendment would be, I would move to amend the budget ordinance as presented to lower millage from 100 mills to 98.8 mills. This is an increase of 1 mill, which would be used solely for infrastructure improvements. Operations and debt millage would remain the same as shown in the ordinance. So that motion is an amendment to the budget ordinance. It states that we would amend the budget ordinance to lower the millage from 100 mils as proposed to 98.8. That is an increase of 1 mil, but it would be used solely for infrastructure improvements, which would be defined. The operation and debt millage would remain the same, as shown in the ordinance.
So going from 97.8 to 98.8.
Correct.
With your amendment.
Yes. I'll offer that as an amendment, and we'll entertain a motion. A second.
Second.
Councilman Arrowood made the initial motion. He'll have to amend his motion before we can offer an amendment.
Okay, all right, so.
Yes, I'm willing to amend. How do we need?
You need to amend your motion, your first, and Mr. Bettis will have to amend his second to reflect that amendment if that's what you would like to do.
Okay, I will.
Hang on before you do that. I think the motion that he made was for discussion purposes. Can we not make a motion for discussion and then vote separately on this piece?
We need the
She's right.
Yeah, we need the approval of.
Technically,
The
a motion
amendment.
for discussion doesn't exist.
Okay, gotcha.
It's not a legal motion.
All right.
It's kind of for record's sake. Well, that's why I did it.
That's right. As in keeping you straight.
We have to we have to amend the motion to include the amendment.
Would you give me your numbers one more time here? Your millage for operations would be what?
It remains the same as it is.
90.9 in the ordinance for operations, sir.
And debt is the same?
Yes, sir, debt remains the same as reflected in the ordinance, 3.8.
And infrastructure is?
Currently, as we've got it right now, is 5.3.
Yeah, but.
His would lower that millage to 4.3. Is that right?
4.1.
4.1, excuse me, 4.1, yes. Because it was a 1.1 or 2.2 mils, so it's 4.1.
Got it. So total mills would be 98.8.
And that 4.1 would reflect an increase of how much? Do you have a clue? Over what it is now?
Over what it is now?
Yeah.
It will actually reflect a decrease over what's presented to you.
Oh, no, I mean, what we spent, what percentage or how many mills did we spend last on infrastructure?
Oh,
Any
this
idea?
particular fiscal year, well, I can tell you right there. It's right here.
360.
Probably. Last year's budgeted numbers, David, if I'm not mistaken, were 450. Is that right? No, excuse me, 660.
But the general fund transfer was 450.
That's right. The general fund transfer was 450.
So totals 660.
That's right.
Roughly, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you cut it to 4.1, how much would that be now, approximately?
No, I'm sorry, the budget that we have proposed is a transfer of, or the dedicated millage is 951.
So will you be reducing it by?
It would drop to about 750 from 950. Correct. Yeah, it would drop from 951 to about 750.
So it's $100,000 increase over last year, is that right?
No, from
No, more than that.
A little bit.
78,000.
Now for the purpose of discussion.
I amend my second.
Jay is,
I'll amend my
Jay is
motion
amended
to reflect the amendment.
the amendment. Bells is, so now the floor is open. Yes. You made the motion. You agreed to
Amend my motion.
amend the motion.
We're good.
To be in the second.
And now you have a motion and a second on the amendment.
On the amendment.
Yes, sir.
Floor is open for discussion.
Now, if you made it 4.3, that would raise it to 774, which would be $114,000 increase.
Make it an even 99 mils? Is that what you're suggesting, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So 1.2.
1.3 or 1.2?
It was 1.2, sir.
1.2?
Mm-hmm.
My objection, I mean, my objective was to validate a dedicated source of funding. This is an issue that we know is never going to go away. And while we desire to have growth pay for itself in some regards, whether or not it is an impact fee or an additional licensing fee or permit fee or whatever. One of the things that we've got to understand is that growth, that new growth helps pay for that in some regard, and particularly if we have an additional fee. But the truth of the matter is the roads that we own, those improvements may be funded through that growth, but they're all continually used by older residents and new residents together. And, you know, to the point that was made about the bridge earlier, I don't know that it is appropriate that we would expect them to, that a new development would pay for a bridge that was 40 years old that, you know, they will be using at some point in time, but not necessarily that they have used in the past. So it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of another at that point about who's paying for it, as long as we've got a dedicated funding source to make sure that it's taken care of. Because even at the rate of inflation, we know that we're losing value on the dollar, but I don't think any of us foresee that asphalt or concrete or labor costs in the construction industry are going to go down in the next 10 years. So we know what we're up against. I certainly would be supportive of taking it to 99 million, whether it's 98.8 or it's 99. I think that is a worthy way for us to move this forward in terms of giving something that people, to Jay's point, can point at that their tax dollars go to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've always said that if people don't like to pay, I don't like to pay taxes. Who does? But when individuals and businesses feel, in Jay's opinion, feel like they're getting their money's worth, they're okay with it. I was not on council, but I know Wayne said it several times that put the vote out there for the people about the hospitality tax. They passed it, and he talked to people today, and yeah, that's well worth it. If there's a good reason for a tax increase, infrastructure is definitely one of them. We started off strong years ago, and we backed up. Well, not backed up, we slacked off, and maintenance costs have gone up, so we're doing less miles or less footage per year because of the cost. So if it's 99 or 98, I don't think it's a hard sell for any of us when our constituents ask us about it.
Would it be your desire then to amend the amended motion?
Well, I can support 4.3 for infrastructure. That won't get you to the 950,000 that's proposed, but it'll get you about 775. which would be a pretty good increase. And if we can further ramp it up next year, we'll look at that and see. I think that's a good proposal. There's still a lot of things in here that I question in the entire budget. But as far as the debt and infrastructure, 4.3 and 5.3, I'm sorry, 3.8 and 4.3 is okay with me. Be nice if we drop the drop the operations mills.
Let's take it one thing at a time. To restate what I think you just said is that you would move to amend the budget ordinance as presented to lower the millage from the proposed 100 mills to 99 mills. This would be an increase of 1.2 mills, which would be used solely for infrastructure improvements. The operation and debt millage would remain the same as shown in the ordinance. Is that correct? We're going to go to 99 mills, so the total would be 4.3. Is that what you're saying?
4.3 for infrastructure.
Okay. Would you amend your amendment to the motion then?
Yes.
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
The gears are turning in Tammy's head. We're probably on thin ice, but we'll keep moving forward here. So Mr. Bettis, if you will amend it as well too.
My amendment to reflect that.
All right. So here's where we are.
Doctor.
Here's where we are. We are amending the ordinance as presented tonight, which was ordinance, I've lost my agenda, which was ordinance
2821, sir.
2821. We have amended it to present a lower millage. We are amending the budget ordinance as presented to lower millage from 100 mills to 99 mills. This is an increase of 1.2 mills, which would be used solely for infrastructure improvements. The operations and debt millage would remain the same as shown in the ordinance.
For now.
For now.
This is a good first reading.
This is a first reading, and obviously we've got, a second one to go, and there, I think, based on the 4 or 5 pages of notes that I took, that somebody at the staff level was doing something similar, and with as many department heads and other employees as we've got here, I think the message is clear about where we'd like to head. So I believe you have good marching orders as we go from here. So I think it is a good place to start. Others?
I'll say that, and I've said this repeatedly, that I think the infrastructure is important, and I think to have a steady, reliable funding source to it is a good idea and a good thing, and I think that this change in the millage is a good compromise. It sounds like Riley's in support of it at this point, so I don't necessarily think you need my vote, but I'm still gonna support it in hopes that we will consider some type of impact fee or infrastructure fee that is, because I think we can agree that new construction is having an impact on our infrastructure, and I really want us to consider bringing that up for a discussion at a future meeting. But I understand, based on the conversation, that we do need a sustainable source in ad valorem taxes. There's no better one than that, and so I will support the 1.2 mil increase.
I think you've got a valid point. We are moving towards this consolidated, the UDO, and that's going to be a good place for us to sort of start. Andy has mentioned, and I know from experience in other communities, that, these types of things don't happen overnight. I would anticipate that, even if we wanted to move forward with an impact fee, it's probably 18 months at the earliest that you can get something like that done. Could even be 2 years. I mean, you've got to,
Well, if you call it an intake fee, it takes longer.
yeah, you've got some hurdles to jump over and some things to do. So, yeah, I agree. The discussion needs to start at some point.
And on a 1.2 mil increase, what does that cost a $200,000 homeowner with a property tax bill?
Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $9. This is not, it is related to the budget and revenue, but another option that we might consider for a revenue source, I know we can't add, well, I assume we can't add a tax, any kind of tax to gasoline sold in the city, is that correct?
I don't think we can get away with that.
Well, my point is, we might be able to, under the business license ordinance, under places who sell retail gasoline, I don't know if you can add anything to that or not.
Just to quickly address the state legislature has already passed state legislation that really locks in the business license ordinance that we'll be enacting under state law. We will be required to enact it by January 1st of 2022. So that will be coming your way as we approach, the fall and winter of this year.
We'll be thinking about that.
Yes, sir.
Duly noted.
All right, others. Andy, the numbers for the health care, does that change this budget at all, or did y'all?
No, sir, it does
pretty well
not.
cover it?
Yeah, we're good.
Discussion.
Well, just I'll be continuing to seek input from my constituents, but again, as a taxpayer in the city myself and as a representative of constituents as we all are, I can support what the mayor is, the compromise the mayor is presenting. Again, because what we're proposing funding is not some faraway project, states away. It's not even for a road or a bridge, in some other part of the state. These are the roads that our citizens are driving on every day. And we all agree that it's not sustainable, the trajectory that we're on, that we got to do something to at least bring us back to an even keel. And I think this helps us do that. I think my constituents are supportive of that as well.
Now, if we only spent like $345,000 last year, do we really plan to spend $1 billion in this upcoming on the infrastructure?
Can I tell you that we have identified $1 million for the projects? No, ma'am, but between the work we're doing on sidewalks, from the intent to gear up for the maintenance and street repair, et cetera, that money will be programmed appropriately and efficiently as quickly as possible. To your point, I agree 100%. There's no sense in charging taxpayers on projects that we cannot get done. So between the work we've done and working with the developers on annexation agreements, between partnering with CPW, we've budgeted in there to do some contract work for them on city streets. We fully anticipate hitting the ground running on this program as soon as the budget's passed at the beginning of the fiscal year. So yes, ma'am, our intent is to absolutely get to work on this. Remember, we've got that list of streets that our budget numbers never, we've always got a list. Remember, that's what we're working off of. That's what you're
Well, I
asking?
know that it was budgeted for $660,000 and only $345,000 was spent, so that was my question. If we're gonna up it that much, and we only spent like half of what was appropriated last year, are we gonna be able?
You just spent 100,000 tonight out of that number. So for instance, for the bridge repair itself is coming out of that fund. So we programmed all of that money. Look at it, Steve.
Yeah.
I don't think we're leaving anything on the table. Yeah.
Question? I did want to say one more thing about the bridge. We could effectively kill that bridge because there's not a lot of people that use it. That is again, ties back to this conversation with growth, because now we clearly need it because there's a neighborhood that's being built just across it. And that really helps to make my point. So again, I hope we'll have that discussion soon. Thank you.
There's no way to get a connection with a Bible book right there.
I don't think so.
Yeah, talk to the railroad about putting that bridge back.
Yeah.
All right, we've got an amendment to the budget that has been amended. Are we clear on what we're voting on this evening? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
No.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
No.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you, council. Appropriate and worthy discussion this evening. Council, in stated business, we have concluded that. We have one item for executive session, personnel matter. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss a personnel matter pertaining to administration as allowed by state statute, section 30-470A1.
Do I hear a second? Second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. In executive session, we have considered one personnel matter pertaining to administration as allowed by state statute, section 30-4-70A1, taking no action in that regard. Do I hear a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you, council.